Welcome everybody to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. And we're right now doing a series on things that you can do to help you maintain your peace during these times of chaos. So I often ask our guests to focus on that, if you will. And while I'm at it, in terms of maintaining peace, I wanted my audience to know that I am a Holy Fire Reiki master, and I am willing to hold classes for those of you who are interested in learning Reiki. It's a great way to learn how to be peaceful within yourself and to help your friends. So if you're interested, you can just go to my website at yourspiritualjourneypodcast.com and send me a note. We can do that online or in person. So today's guest is April Jackson, a very busy lady. It's taken us a while to get together. Actually, one of my subscribers on YouTube suggested that I touch base with April. She saw April as the ideal candidate for this podcast.
Honored.
So that's something else. As someone who watches this program or listens to it, feel free to recommend guests. I do follow up on those recommendations. So April is an empowering facilitator and coach. She ignites passion and fosters collaboration in individuals and teams. She's got over 25 years of experience in education, administration, and leadership, and she cultivates inclusive environments wherever she goes. She's committed to a mission of wellness for all. Now, there's a mission,
Yes.
I can tell you. This commitment is representative of her brand ambassadorship with the international company Lululemon. That sounds very lyrical.
Yeah, Lululemon is how they say it.
Okay.
It does sound lyrical, huh?
Yeah. She represents the South Hills, Pittsburgh store and all of Allegheny County. She's a board member for Case-Specific Nutrition's Chronic Disease and Health Alliance.
Yeah.
Boy, we'll have to get into that. And a community board member for Gizmology, a tech prep apprentice program. So she is all over the place.
Yeah.
April incorporates mindfulness practices to create a supportive and human-centered space. This, along with her commitment to equity, ensures all participants have a chance to contribute and achieve their goals. Her background in holistic support empowers individuals to navigate personal and professional challenges. And she's got a proven track record of facilitating impactful discussions for organizations like WQED, the City of Pittsburgh, and FedEx Ground. And I'm not going to go through this whole list because it's a long list.
Yes.
She's got a BA in history from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Her graduate studies were in education administration, very similar to mine.
Really?
Yeah, and leadership. She's a 500 YRT Yoga Teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure what that is, so
No,
we'll have to find out.
Yeah.
And a certified mindfulness instructor. And I think I'm just going to stop there.
Thank you. That's a lot to hear. You're like, oh my gosh,
and let
so
you
much.
talk. But boy, you are just full of surprises.
Thank you.
So, April, tell us about your spiritual journey.
I I was very thankful you asked about that because it made me reflect on that. And I think I had put something, maybe even in the bio or somewhere. It's like, I believe my spiritual journey began before I was even born. Like I was conceived in love, and, I'm here for a reason. So I'm assuming God really wanted me here. And it's interesting. My mother really pursued a spiritual education for us. I'll say education in the sense she wanted us to experience all different religions and all different cultures so we can make a choice for ourselves.
Wow.
It's myself and my sister.
That's really different.
Yeah, it was really different. And although she was very grounded in faith and Christianity, and that was what was in our home, we went to, I was telling my son the other day, Jehovah Witnesses, he goes to Pitt. And so he's like, they're all around. And I said, yeah. And I said, well, when I was growing up, I grew up in Los Angeles. They would knock on the door and there's the doorbell and all you'd have is a peephole. But she would listen to them. She would get some of the literature, have us read it. We went to some temples. There's the Christian Science, which is different than Scientology, but we would go to some of their services. We learned about the tenets of, different faiths, Jewish faith. I went to school with a lot of Jewish friends. Like we were in a Jewish community. We went to school. So I learned so much, and the path was so beautiful because one thing she always said is all paths lead to God. Right. And, different people have different names for that, but it's really, there's one source, there's one God. And so I'm very thankful. My mother's no longer here, and I'm just thankful that she was open to that and expressed that. And so as I got older and got into my 20s and I wanted to explore a little bit more, I read the Celestine Prophecy, and I felt I liked being a woman of God and a Christian woman. And I liked knowing that there's so much more than just the legalism that often comes. Yeah. And so, in my mid-20s or so, I got really steeped in, it's like, I'm going to read the Bible every day. I'm going to listen to nothing but Christian music. And, I think it set this foundation and this grounding and centering for me. And at the same time, like, my mom and aunts did yoga and I was a dancer. And so I just feel like it really filled my soul. And I really believe there's soul and spirit in the body, you know? And so that's a little bit of my spiritual journey.
Oh, that sounds marvelous.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I'm very thankful for it.
Yeah. Especially the idea that in your 20s, you dedicated yourself to this, because often that's when people veer away.
Exactly. And I had some veer away moments for sure. Oh. But, after college and everything, I think even through college, I think the veering away gets unsettling. Yeah. And there's something you want to anchor to. Yeah. And so, it was definitely my 20s when I anchored hard. Yeah. Yeah.
So did you grow up in California?
I did, born and raised.
Okay. Yeah. So what brought you here to Pittsburgh?
Oh, that's so funny. Such a journey. Born and raised, California, everything. When I got married in 97, my ex-husband was from Atlanta. And somehow we ended up in Atlanta. Well, not somehow, he got a job back in Atlanta. All three of our boys were born in Atlanta. And I decided that I mentioned to you I was in education. So I was a 3rd and 4th grade Spanish bilingual teacher. I worked for LA Unified. I became an administrator. Was really on that path. Yeah. And then, we had kids, and I had 1, 2, 3. And it was real important that they have a foundation and some stability, which can come in any kind of way. But my choice was to stay home. Yeah. And so stayed home. And then Pittsburgh had this Marcellus shale open up. And there was, gas and oil,
Right.
and that's the industry he was in. So we ended up moving here in 2012.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I've been here ever since, and I think I'm kind of a yinzer now. Boys are in school here and matriculated, and I liked Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. It's definitely, I felt like being from California. I didn't realize how progressive it is, and not in the political sense, just the exposure to so many opportunities and so many religions and different things. When I went to Atlanta is when I became certified to teach yoga, and started really diving into mindfulness practices.
Yeah.
And so when I came here, I was surprised. I was like, there seems to be a limited amount of yoga studios. I didn't see a lot of places where I could do mindfulness practices, meditation groups. It's changed a lot.
Yes, there are yoga studios all over the place.
Right,
now.
right. And so, but it was an opportunity when I came here. I was thankful to be able to bring that with me and explore and teach and, support the community in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So where were you doing yoga, or you're probably still doing it?
Well, that's interesting. I'm not doing it as much.
Okay.
Because I got sick, and I decided that I felt like I was giving and giving and teaching and teaching and doing, that I didn't want to be a hypocrite.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like,
sure.
When did I have time to sit and meditate? When did I have time to go for a walk? When did I have time to do my own practice? And in hindsight, I think God was telling me, because I ended up getting sick. And so I've taken about a year and a half off, but I still teach. When I came here, I live in South Hills, and I went to the rec center, Upper St. Clair Rec Center. And I took the kids, and I was like, they don't have yoga classes. And I taught cycle, and it's like, hey, I could totally teach these things. And so I started teaching there. And then there's a studio, a gym called Mecca, and it's in Mount Lebo. And I ended up going back to work and becoming the manager there. And we opened one in the Strip. So I taught yoga there. South Hills Power Yoga. This wonderful woman named Stacy. I started taking classes there when I came in 2012, and I started teaching there. And I do some work with a nonprofit called Open Up Pittsburgh, and they center mindfulness and the arts around those with disabilities. And so I was going into schools teaching yoga, and I think those are all my places.
That's quite a few.
It is quite a few.
I can see why you were feeling a little burned out.
I very much so. Yeah. And I had to listen to my body and to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're doing a little bit now?
I am doing a little bit.
Way?
Yeah, like with Open Up, I do that. But it's interesting is now I teach more well-being and support of others in companies and talks. Like I'm going to do something at Pitt in a week or two for like a directorial staff. I was so honored to work with the Jewish Health Foundation a couple of weeks ago, and they have a cohort of like frontline social workers, therapists, whatnot. And I do these workshops and seminars, and I really try to infuse mindfulness into all of it.
Yeah.
So encouraging people to be comfortable and okay with the rest and restoration of themselves and well-being practices. And I infuse practices into what we do. So we're like, okay, let's do some breathing. Let's do some meditating. Let's explore what these practices look like for you, because I can give you like a general picture of practices. People are like, you must meditate this way. And it's like, well, there's so many options to meditating and whatnot. Yeah. So I really do enjoy being able to share that. And my background in yoga really lends itself to that. And the experience I've had, I've taught so many people which has been such a blessing. Like I've had all kind of people in my classes, all sizes, shapes, colors, ages, occupations. And in hindsight, I'm like, God, that was such a blessing to be able to engage with so many human beings.
Yeah.
So I still really enjoy doing that.
So how do you transition from just teaching yoga to the general public to ending up doing mindfulness practices in corporations and businesses? How did that happen?
I know. How did that happen? I was really teaching yoga, and it's so interesting in my experience. You know, you latch onto something, you're like, I'm in this, and this is me, and I am yoga, and I'm going to explore all the tenets of it, and I'm going to do it. And again, I realized that I was becoming pigeonholed, and not tunnel vision, but very focused in that. And when I came here and I took a step back, I just realized I don't always want to do a physical practice. Here in United States, Western, we do a lot of asanas. We do a lot of postures in yoga, and it's very physical. And we do talk about breathing, pranayama practices, and we talk about different limbs, but it's not as central to like the physical practice.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to take a step back and open up and explore more. And when I was working at the one studio as the manager, corporate wellness became a thing. And so we had like a whole nutrition department. We had a nutrition team. And people who would come to the gym, they're like, hey, I'm the senior VP of blah, 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 blah. I would love for my team to experience you, April. Can you record yourself, or can you come and talk with them and work with them? And I was like, sure. And so one thing led to another thing. I started talking to different companies and talking to their staffs and their teams about nutrition. And I always brought it back to like well-being, like you have to rest. If you breathe, you lower your heart rate, different things that we know to be true.
Sure. Yeah.
This is a way to navigate through stress. It's not an answer to end stress or anything, but as human beings, we embody so much. And I feel like here as human beings, we're taught to disconnect from our bodies.
Yeah.
And so, one thing led to another, and more people asked, and they wanted to pay me, and
yeah, why not?
Yeah,
Sure.
it's really been wonderful, because I think for so long it's considered woo-woo, like
yeah, sure.
Don't talk about that at work.
I get it. I've been called woo-woo.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just natural,
Yeah. So is it mainly Hatha yoga that you teach?
It is primarily Hatha yoga. I just like my mom, how she had me explore different religions. I have explored different, practices of yoga. I love Iyengar because I'm really into body. I grew up a dancer from the time I was 5 all the way through college, and afterwards I was a ballet dancer, and I like the body, and I like postural alignment, and I like the way it makes me feel. So I was attracted to Iyengar. I liked Ashtanga because I liked feeling strong. And so I practiced some Ashtanga as well. But ultimately, I feel like all of the different philosophical yoga practices are all, again, one, and they point to the unity of mind and body. And I think they all have different things that contribute to just a holistic practice. Yeah. So I just say, I just, do Hatha yoga. Since I was a dancer, I love a flow. So vinyasa is a practice of breath and movement together, synchronized. So I kind of do a lot of vinyasa. And I realized too later on, that's not accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
And so now I really, and there's a big movement and push of accessibility, because at some point all of us are going to have some kind of disability, some way, shape, or form. And so now I'm not such a strict yoga teacher. I'm like, turn this way, move your foot, pivot this way, bend that way, touch this way. I used to be. Now I'm like, let's explore what your body can do.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a Qigong teacher who is very much into whatever feels good, do that. If it starts to feel painful, stop doing that.
Yeah.
And just do what feels right for you and for your body.
Yes.
And that just makes so much sense.
Yeah, it really
because
opens things up.
If it's putting you in pain, you're not going to do it.
Right. Right.
And you're not going to want to practice something that's painful. So,
right.
And I recently had someone on this program who was a Hatha yoga teacher, and then she studied Kundalini yoga.
Yeah,
and
I love
she fell in love
Kundalini.
with that.
Yeah.
And she decided to combine the two, and then came up with what she calls chakra yoga.
I like that.
And that was an interesting discussion. I don't know. I'm more into Qigong.
I love Qigong.
Than yoga.
Yeah. One of my first instructors was a Qigong in Atlanta, Dr. Michael. I loved it.
Yeah.
But see, there's diversity in that. Like everybody needs something different for themselves. And so that's why I think it's so great to have options.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, there was something that I read that I said I would get back to you on because I was curious about it. RYT yoga.
Yes.
What is that?
So RYT is an abbreviation for Registered Yoga Teacher.
Okay. Registered with who?
Perfect. Yeah. There's a certification body called Yoga Alliance. Back in the day, I look a little younger, and I say that because people are like, "You're not that old." I look younger than people think. So back in the day, you didn't need a certification. You were trained by like a master yoga teacher, right? And you would kind of apprentice under them. And then I remember one day my teacher said, I want you to teach the class. I was like, oh my God. Oh Lord, I'm ready. But then after a while, I guess so many people were conveniently being certified to teach yoga, and there seemed to be like a lack of foundation in inconsistency in how things were being taught.
Yeah. So
Yoga Alliance has been around for a long time, but it came to pass that I think it was like in 96. I remember this in 96. At this one gym, I was at Lifetime Fitness, which is this huge gym, beautiful gym. They don't have them here, but they had like a whole yoga department, and you had to have a YTT, which is yoga teacher training of 200 hours in order to teach. I had so many like workshops and seminars and classes I had taken that they were like, okay, you can grandfather in. And so now if you want to teach at like a gym or most yoga facilities too, you have to show proof of certification. It's like your education. So 200 is what gets you in the door, and you usually it's about a year of classes, and those add up to like maybe 30 hours, and then you teach another 70 hours, and then you get all of that confirmed, so you're 200. And then the next phase is doing your 300, which explores the tenets more, and you have more time to teach, more time to learn, and then you become a 500 RYT, and then you could become an ERYT, which means you could become an educator. And you can teach other people. You can then go into the process of like, okay, we're going to do a 200 certification, and I'm going to teach it.
Yeah. I got it.
So,
well, Reiki went through a similar process.
Really?
And there were a number of reasons for doing that, I guess, because Reiki comes in a lot of forms.
Yeah.
And there was a need to sort of standardize at least the basic tenets,
Right.
and to make sure that people were doing it properly
Right.
if they were going to represent themselves as a Reiki master
Right.
or just a Reiki practitioner, because it meant many different things for many different people.
Mm-hmm.
So William Lee Rand put together an instruction manual, and these are the basics, and this is what you do for Reiki 1, Reiki 2,
Mm-hmm.
Master Reiki, and then beyond that.
Yeah.
And it quickly became the recognized global Reiki organization.
Yeah.
And that was a need to standardize what
Right.
that word meant and what people were doing if they were practicing Reiki.
Yeah. Which I
So,
think is important, because as human beings, we do a lot. So I
Yeah.
know, like, in yoga, there are some who were losing the integrity of the practice, and, taking
Mhm.
advantage of other human beings. And I like having that foundation,
Right.
I think that's good. And then I think within that you can explore. But for me, it's like, okay, it is helpful. Now it gets to be, money becomes involved, and
Yeah.
that's the thing where it can be gate kept, because
Uh-huh.
not everyone can afford the certifications or take the time to study. So accessibility for it, I think, is important. And I know with
Yeah.
the Yoga Alliance, they started scholarshiping people so that they can afford to do the training and offer it in different ways. I know at the nonprofit Open Up, we do a YTT, and we've had a couple of students who were visually impaired. Like one woman was completely blind. We've had some with disabilities, like physical disabilities, come through the program, because it's important that you allow everyone to be able to learn these things if they so choose.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I felt very accomplished. For a while, I refused to do it because I was stuck in the old ways, and I'm like, oh, I'm a yoga teacher. I have been trained as a yoga teacher. I know what I'm doing. I don't have to pay this money. But I gave in, and I wanted to.
Yeah.
I'm an educated person. Like I like to go to school. I like to read. I like to learn. So yeah.
So, out of curiosity, being the Christian woman you are,
Mm-hmm.
what brand of Christianity? What denomination? Where did you end up?
Yeah, that's another good question, Dr. Bob. I was thinking about that too, because my family kind of grew up Presbyterian. So my great aunt was Presbyterian.
Uh-huh.
And I say my great aunt because my grandmother had passed, and my great aunt was the matriarch of the family. And then as I got older, we ended up like going to a Foursquare church. And also a missionary Baptist church. Those are the two that I really like sunk my teeth in.
Wait a minute. Did you say Foursquare?
Yeah, it was like Church of the Harvest, Foursquare.
Oh,
But it wasn't really like, I really think it was a hybrid.
yeah.
And so in my 20s, I was really into Faithful Central was a big church, and my mother ended up joining there. We were all part of there. So it was very missionary Baptist, and the singing and the dancing and speaking in tongues. And it was more community. And I loved it, just the, fellowship and support. But in the end, later on, I chose non-denominational. And so that's how I subscribe to my Christianity now. And I haven't found a church home per se. Like, I'm in the South Hills, and I found that going to church there, like I in Atlanta, a lot of the churches, the one that we ended up, which was non-denominational, was very diverse. Like, there are people of every walk of life there.
Right.
in South Hills, I found like I would be the only Black woman there.
Yeah, right.
Or I'm going to a church and there's nothing but Black people there. And that's not what I want. But I do, I visit churches, my partner goes to Mount Ararat, so I'll visit there sometimes. So so now I just say I'm non-denominational Christian.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it somewhere different every Sunday, or sometimes it's just stay at home Sunday?
Yeah, most times it's stay at home Sunday. I pray a lot. Like even in my dreams, like I wake up, I'm always like saying a Bible verse. I'm always praying. I journal. I walk a lot, and I like to have all these conversations with God. He's like, okay, April. But I haven't, and I don't know, maybe I'll come back to that. For me, I became real stressed out with like having 3 kids, getting the whole family together, and losing my religion every Sunday. Like, get your shirt on and you better eat breakfast and we gotta go in 5 minutes, and running out the door. And it's like I've totally like railed on the family, and we're going to church for worship and peace. And so I take a step back, but I love it. Like my oldest son, he goes to church every Sunday now, and he's not even living at home. And he's reading the Bible, and like we instilled that in him, but to see him explore and do it on his own really touches my heart. And it's like, okay, then it's his calling and it's his time. And I would like to think like he was able to witness some of those practices in the home and with me and, the family.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Okay. Tell me about the CDHA, Chronic Disease and Health Alliance.
Yeah.
What's that?
There's a nutrition company. I don't know if it's a nutrition company, but a group of practices called case-specific nutrition. And they, like if you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, you need to see a dietitian, they'll refer you to case-specific. Okay. And so, again, I made so many connections when I worked at Mecca as a manager. So this guy, Vince, they would make meal prep services. And so I met him, and they decided they wanted to have like a nonprofit spin out from their case specific. And the idea was to offer foods to communities where they're like food deserts. And they had a goal of, distributing 3,000 meals. So he was like, hey, we want to start this nonprofit. Are you interested in being on the board? I was like, sure. And so it's been slow go. They also worked with me. I started a group in McKees Rocks. It's called Place-Based Healing Circles, which I don't even think I put in there.
You did? Okay.
But part of it, like with the place-based healing affinity circles in McKees Rocks, we started it, and there were some issues in McKees Rocks with some of the organizations. They really wanted to like eliminate poverty and eliminate violence in the community, and they wanted more members of the community to come together. And when it was presented to me, there was a woman who's like, you should talk to April, which whoever said on your YouTube, talk to April. Thank you. And so when they were talking with me, I really wanted them to understand. My opinion was that it's hard to ask people to come together if the individual isn't together or they don't have the opportunity to be together. And so they were like, what do you think? I was like, well, we could talk about some basic principles. So nutrition, and that's, with the CDHA, like, let's talk about nutrition and well-being. Let's talk about resilience. We get together for 6 weeks. Now I have facilitators who do it. We do aromatherapy, just, lighting candles. We do meditation every single time. We ask people to sit in a circle and deep breathe and sound bowls. And and just demystifying these practices for
Yeah.
people. And it's been beautiful. We're ending. There's at Kingsley in East Liberty, they're finishing up a 6-week cohort. But I was able, like Vince and his crew, they'll come and talk about nutrition and wellness. And then, like I said, we invite meditation teachers. We invite different subject matter experts to come in and to sit with people. And it's been beautiful to see. Each group is a group of 10, and they bond and create their own culture, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's how an extension of that. And I still sit on the board. I think they're going to kind of switch gears a little bit, grant writing and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm really glad that I sit on that. And eventually I ended up getting a chronic disease myself, which I didn't know that was going to happen. Yeah. So that kind of changed my view of life, made me sit down. And
are you willing to talk about that at all?
Yeah, it was January 2023. I got diagnosed with lupus.
Okay.
And initially I got freaked out because I remember as a little girl hearing about it, and it's like, oh, it's going to affect that affects people's kidneys and they die. And I was like, oh no. But yeah, things just kept happening. I was getting rashes. I was tired. I didn't feel right. Joint pain, just very weird stuff. And I was like, but I'm healthy. I teach yoga.
Right.
I teach fitness. I'm the healthy one. I eat right. I do all the things.
Yeah, right.
And to some degree, I was doing all the things to try to control life. And I think that happens.
So it's a wake-up call.
It's a huge wake-up call. It's a huge wake-up call.
You are not in control.
Yep. And I feel like later on with my religious walk, I had to learn that too. I think oftentimes people get into religion because it's helpful. It's like, here's the path. You do A, B, C, D, E. This turns out. But that's not the intention of religion, or your spiritual walk. And with this, it's definitely taken a toll on me mentally and physically. And I'm thankful. I'm very thankful that, okay, I have this human body. I'm still here and healthy. And now let me navigate in a different way. And I think about it all the time. I tell people it's like the thorn in Paul's side, right? Like,
yeah,
that's what it is. And that keeps me grounded. And that's like, okay, then I rely on God. I rely on my source. This human body is just that. It's just muscle and bones and fat and
Yeah, I have essential tremors, and I've always seen that as, okay, that's my thorn.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to deal with something.
Exactly, and that makes us human, right?
Right, yeah. Well, you certainly look healthy.
Thank you. I appreciate that because I've definitely physically have gone through some things.
Yeah.
And that's my prayer every morning. Like, okay, God, and I take my deep breaths. I really feel as though when you're under duress and, some stress, that's the most important time to dive into your practices.
Yeah.
And that's the time when you just don't feel like it.
Right. When you need it the most.
Exactly.
You don't want to do
it. Exactly. And so it's really encouraged me to, okay, April, get up and meditate, get up and pray, get up and breathe. And there are times when I don't,
Sure.
But I'm like, this is why you do all the things. You're not just healthy skipping through the daisies and you do it. Like, it's to really like settle your nervous system and slow down so you can experience and enjoy life.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that, and this this is an occurrence with many people I interview on the show, is that you exude the energy of love.
Oh, thank
And
you.
it shows. And it's that energy that we all have inside,
Right.
that often people keep it inside.
Yeah.
But I can see that you share it, and it's palpable. So thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
So this being committed to a mission of wellness for all, does that mean that you look for ways to live out that mission on an ongoing basis, and you look for those opportunities, or do they just seem to find you? Because it sounds like a lot of them just find you.
I think the latter is true. And that's a great question. I think, I think back on like my career, when I started teaching in gyms, teaching wellness and whatnot. I kind of just wanted to get out the house. I had these kids, they're 16 months apart, and I'm like, I'm home with these boys all day. But that's not true. I think even in college, like I would always go take a fitness class. I went to school on the beach. I'm a beach baby. I love the ocean.
What are you doing in Pittsburgh?
I know. I'm landlocked. Well, there's the rivers, but it's not the beach.
Yeah.
I attribute that to learning from my family, in California, and the stereotypical, like, they're all granolas. I'm like, totally, yeah, I'm my Birkenstocks. And I enjoyed it so much. Like, I got such an endorphin high just teaching and sharing. And for me, like, I went through some really dark times, and what got me through was like, oh gosh, I can go work out, I can go meditate, I can go practice my yoga. And those were the times where I'm just not even thinking about all the dark stuff around.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if this is the way it feels, I would love to share it with other people.
Yeah.
And so, I'm always like, did you know about this? And did you hear about that? And so then I put myself in spaces, and then the opportunities came. And that one thing about Wellness for All is, again, I go back to so many things were gate kept. I didn't see a reflection of myself. The first yoga teacher that I saw that was African American, I was in my 30s before I had an African American yoga teacher.
Yeah, right.
And I had been practicing like since the early 90s, since, my 20s. And then even anyone brown who was of Indian origin or South Asian origin, I had to seek out, like if somebody came from India and they were going to do a big yoga seminar, I had to seek that out. I couldn't just go to a studio and find that. And I was like, that's not reflective of the roots of this practice. And I want to learn from the culture. That's part of it, right? Experience the culture. And so that it being gate kept, it being like, oh, you have to pay $40 a class in order to go. There's so many who can't afford that. There are times I totally couldn't afford that. I mean, I would even budget now to do that. And so that's why that healing circle started too, because let's give people an option and an opportunity to have the space to explore and take care of themselves. And the opportunities just, you know what? The opportunities come, but I think it's divine. I think it's like, God is like, okay, here's another path for you. And I can make a choice, but I'm so thankful I've been able to do this as opposed to like having to grind and do some job that I don't want to do. I was like, I can't believe people pay me to speak about this stuff. I'm like, really? Okay.
There was something that you just said that struck a chord with me, just because we are right now focused on providing people with practices that they can use to navigate chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Because the chaos around us isn't just political, it's the environment, it's all the wars, it's media constantly bombarding you with negative energy.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you talked about sort of the dark night of the soul and how to
Mm-hmm.
how to get beyond that and
Yeah.
above it. So just address that a little bit more, maybe. What exactly did you do? I mean, you did your yoga practices.
Yeah, which really was amazing.
Yeah.
Like Shavasana, you know, at the end of a practice, to be able to just get out of your mind.
You can't just throw a word like that.
Oh, that's true,
and
huh?
not tell the audience what you're talking about.
Thank you. That's so true. So in most yoga practices, one, Sanskrit is an ancient language that identifies the postures, the movements, the poses.
Right.
And most of the time, most practices are an encouragement of learning your body. So if you're going to stand in a pose, like what feels good, what doesn't feel good, where are you challenged? Where do you feel strong? And can you think about that without judgment of yourself? Mm-hmm. That was huge for me. Like, you don't have to judge your body. Like, if you can't bend your knee to 90 degrees, why? Oh, maybe my knee's tight. Maybe, I don't know, my muscle hurts. I don't know. And that it's just a fact. Yeah. As opposed to like, you better bend that knee to 90 degrees. And if it's not there, something's wrong. Turn this way, do this, do that. And then, so going through that movement practice would help like work some of the energy out. And then at the end of most practices, you give yourself space to just be. And so the pose, lying down on your back, Shavasana. And Shavasana is about surrendering and letting go. Okay. And so learning that, like being able to do that, oh my God, like my eyes roll back in my head now. I'm like, oh, if I could just take myself there. And the process of learning how to constantly let go of the thoughts in my mind, which were infiltrated by media, the news, responsibilities, me judging myself, me judging others. That was something I was like, I'm like, this is a miracle. Like, why doesn't everyone do this? Yeah. And so that is something, and also just being physical, like being able to, like maybe I would take a cycle class and I would go hard, and then I would go and then do a yoga practice, and my body just felt so good afterwards. And even during the time, I'm not thinking about, did I pay that bill? And oh my God, the world's coming to an end, and all those things exist and all those things are true, but they don't have to be the reality and the truth in every moment. Mm-hmm. And so, and then learning more and more, like, oh, I can breathe deeper. I can do different breathing practices. And like when I learned, like when you inhale in, your mind takes that gap between your inhale and your exhale. And I was like, huh. And so you don't realize it per se, but then you're not thinking about everything else. And I just, all of those practices were just so helpful. And it helped me like with even raising my family when the kids were 2. Oh, yeah. And they're just like, 2, 3, going through 10. And I was like, stop, take a deep breath. Stop, take a deep breath. Okay. And I remember one day a few years ago, I'm having a fit. I'm like, I don't know what I'm mad about or whatever. My son's like, Mom, stop and take a deep breath.
There you go.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I just found all those practices really helped. And I feel as though it's universal. Mm-hmm. Like you don't have to do yoga. You can just sit and breathe intentionally. Yeah. You know, you don't have to do anything, we kind of just naturally meditate. Like if we sit and we daydream, or we just do something rhythmically, and
Yeah.
us as human beings, I think naturally know how to decompress, or else I don't think we would have survived through all the wars, right? And through so much that our world has been through since the beginning of time.
Yeah. Yeah, because you also mentioned walking. And do you have any special places where you walk?
So I have a dog. I love him. And
Okay.
I love my neighborhood. I'll walk through my neighborhood, and I have a lot of grass in the back and a hill, and there are a lot of trees, a lot of deer. So I love my neighborhood. And then I'm near Boyce Mayview Park. Like literally, that's a 5-minute drive.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're just away somewhere when you're walking through there. And so I love walking in Boyce Mayview. And there's some waterfalls in there. Yeah. And it's so close to home.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so convenient. And I'll walk like maybe 6 a.m. And I have a neighbor. She must get out at 5 a.m. And she walks all over the place. And I'm so encouraged by her. It's like, I'm going to keep walking like that. So those are my two places I love. If I travel, or when I travel, I can walk along the beach all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, believe it or not, we've used up our time.
Wow. It's been great. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is the point in the interview where I ask you to leave our audience with a few words of wisdom.
Oh.
And if you're not feeling too wise, just any words will do. But whatever you'd like to leave them with.
I would like to leave everyone with the idea of extending yourself grace and mercy on yourself. Grace goes a long way in supporting you and loving yourself, and being able to then extend that out to others.
Yeah.
So when those moments of judgment come in, take a deep breath and extend yourself some grace.
That's a great, great way to leave the audience. And audience, as always, take what you've heard, whatever resonates with you, use it in your life, put the rest on a shelf, and pull it down when you're ready for it.
I love that.
Until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.